Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com, on YouTube, Dwyer70905. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, more beer for us. Tyson Fury delivered. If you're a gambler following my Dwyer 70905 channel, just remember, after the party, get a designated driver. Let me say this, and it really needs to be said. Wladimir Klitschko is an obvious first ballot Hall of Famer. When you look at his body of work, you're going to see a lot of wins, a lot of title defenses. There were a lot of people out there who hopped in the ring against him and were highly regarded by the public, right? He beat guys like Kubrat Pulev when Pulev was unbeaten, right? He had a pretty good reign. The David Haye fight, David Haye actually had a share of the heavyweight title, right? He beat Haye by a pretty sizable margin, right? So Wladimir Klitschko had some great moments in the ring. He was really the truth serum, the litmus test for fighters in the heavyweight division. Now, I know people who subscribe to my YouTube channel sometimes feel I'm a little bit too hard in pointing out the holes in the games of even Hall of Fame fighters, right? I got a lot of blowback here online when I made the argument that Ali, a personal favorite of mine, didn't really go to the body that well, couldn't really lead in fights that well, was more of a counter, right? A clever opponent, Jimmy Young, could actually make Ali look bad by simply not throwing punches, not giving Ali countering opportunities. I name Ali because he's one of the best in boxing history, right? If you look at Sugar Ray Robinson, another guy considered to be a great fighter, right? You know, many people view him as #1 all time, pound for pound, right? He had a problem against really front foot heavy, aggressive fighters. So he lost to Jake LaMotta. He lost to Randy Turpin. Quite frankly, he's lucky to have won the Turpin rematch, right? Turpin had him in trouble there too, right? We're all human. None of us are perfect. None of us are bulletproof, right? As good as Wladimir Klitschko is, he has holes in his game. Now, let's say you're playing tennis, right? Because a lot of these sports overlap. Let's say you're playing tennis and you realize over time that the other guy can't really come to the net, right? He's baseline. He's serving volley. He's not a guy who can come to the net. So as you're playing him, you start to realize that the shots that you couldn't hit against a guy with a net game, you can actually hit against him, because he's not going to be able to come to the net. He's not going to be able to blow it by you, be hyper aggressive, change the tempo of the tennis match. Well, Wladimir Klitschko yesterday, right, couldn't come inside because Wladimir Klitschko doesn't have an inside game, right? The reason why Wladimir Klitschko looked so inactive, the reason why Wladimir Klitschko looked so wooden, is because Wladimir Klitschko could not do what James DeGale did in Canada the first 3 rounds against Lucien Boutte. You watch fights, let me name some other fighters. Marcus Maidana. You watch a Marcus Maidana fight, and you know it's just a matter of time before your back's up against the ropes and this guy's right on you. This guy's inside on you. you know that's just a matter of time, right? It's going to happen sooner or later in the fight. You know Marcus Maidana isn't the kind of guy to need a cushion between himself and you. Rather, he's prepared to literally come up, lean on you, and be throwing punches from up close. That's not Wladimir Klitschko, right? Wladimir Klitschko needs room. He's not a guy to come up, lean on you, and throw punches. He's also not a guy to go to the body much, right? So, unfortunately for him, he was fighting a more complete fighter. Tyson Fury, and yesterday you only saw a portion of Tyson Fury. He didn't even have to unfold his entire game. Tyson Fury knew that he could stay outside. He knew he could throw a jab over Wladimir Klitschko's, right? That's the other thing. Klitschko is a guy who fights tall. That's devastating against shorter opponents. Yesterday, he was in the ring with a guy who's as tall as LeBron James, right? Tyson Fury knew he could stay outside. He could throw a jab over Klitschko's guard. He knew he had the reach and spacing, and let me make the point here, that spacing doesn't show up in the CompuBox numbers. Right? Tyson Fury knew he had the reach, he had the timing, he had the spacing, where Wladimir Klitschko was not going to be able to land his jab. Right? I was communicating with a friend by text. He said to me, boring fight, you got to be kidding me. When's the last time you saw a guy who was so sure of the spacing, was so sure of Wladimir Klitschko's inability to hit him, that he has his left hand dangling by his side, like Tyson Fury did yesterday? Right? His left hand is dangling like Roy Jones's left hand dangled in Jones's prime. Right? He knew, based on Wladimir Klitschko's inability to bum rush him, right? Wladimir Klitschko's need for a cushion, spacing-wise, between him and his opponent, right? Tyson Fury knew that Wladimir Klitschko, who has a great straight right hand, couldn't touch him from that distance with it. Let me point out, too, the third round. Tyson Fury goes southpaw. He knew Wladimir Klitschko's style doesn't match up well with southpaws. As I've said here before, the first Tony Thompson Wladimir Klitschko fight's an eye-opener. People need to realize that Thompson had a leg injury going into the bout and couldn't move, right? Tyson Fury doesn't have a leg injury, right? He doesn't. And so he was able to couple it with movement. So when Fury goes southpaw, you're going to notice Fury is so certain that Wladimir Klitschko can't take the step forward. See you later. That Wladimir Klitschko can't take the step forward. That Fury at one point puts his hand behind his back. Right? I'm just telling you, you couldn't envision that happening in yesterday's Lucien Bute, James DeGale fight. I'm just here to tell you, you couldn't envision that happening against Mike Tyson, against Joe Frazier, against Rocky Marciano, against heavyweight champs with inside games, against heavyweight champs who know how to go to the body, who know how to come up and smother you. Wladimir Klitschko, for all of his talents, doesn't have that skill set. Right? He just doesn't. So what you had here was Tyson Fury using lateral movement and angles fluidity, body feints, leg feints, keeping Wladimir Klitschko in neutral, right? Klitschko would need to kind of reset as Fury is moving around the ring, right? Fury's feinting, he's feinting, he's throwing a jab. I'm here to tell you, Fury has an excellent jab. We just don't consider it to be Wladimir Klitschko level, because Fury doesn't need to have it be the focal point of his offensive game. So the entire match, except for the 12th round, is Wladimir Klitschko trying to get in range, right, to throw a left hook or a right, cross. That's the entire fight, right? He can't fight small. He's made a career fighting tall. By fighting small, he's not going to bend at the waist, suddenly bob and weave, come inside, and start fighting like James DeGale did yesterday in the first 3 rounds. Right? Wladimir Klitschko, as I said, he's a Hall of Famer. But this fit together like a puzzle. Right? Tyson Fury, and I understand he's not the best singer. Okay. I understand if I were casting for a movie and I wanted some athletic, muscular guy to play the heavyweight champion, he might not be the person I pick. Right? He looks a little flabby. Right? I understand in interviews he's a little bit salty. Right, folks? This guy is a fighter who has a chance to be great. He's the best heavyweight to come along in several years. Right? I was a little bit surprised that Lennox Lewis, that David Haye, that other heavyweights felt a need to kind of diss him. What I want you to do is to go back to the 1960s, right? And look at the heavyweights who lined up to diss Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali, right? Understand they're talking about him because they have to. Understand some athletes are overrated, some athletes are underrated. This is the early innings part of the Tyson Fury story, right? I know Deontay Wilder texted him afterwards and said, hey, coming to get you. I'm just here to tell you there is no way that Deontay Wilder's handlers are going to allow that fight to happen anytime soon. You didn't even see the part of Tyson Fury's game where he fights small, where he shortens his punches, where he comes inside, like the first Derek Chisora fight. He didn't have to show that to you because he knew he had a guy who couldn't come to the net. Right? He's standing in front of Klitschko and he knows there's no possibility that Klitschko's suddenly going to duck in, come low, stay low, start riddling his body with hooks. He knew that. Right? He knew Klitschko's home run punches. Left hook, right cross. Right? He knew. Think about it. 6'9", he knew. Klitschko wasn't going to drill his body. Klitschko wasn't going to land his jab. Right? So what you had here was really a perfect storm. Right? Fury believes Klitschko dodged him for the last 5 years. Right? Curiously, right, reminiscent of baseball teams watering down base paths, right, to prevent Maury Wills from stealing bases on them. Curiously, the ring was a bit soft. right? The British Boxing Board had to get involved to say, whoa, what's going on with this? Right? Because I believe everyone understood Tyson Fury was too fluid, too mobile for Wladimir Klitschko. Right? So let's salute the reign of Wladimir Klitschko. Right? I know there's a lot of spin. I hope, like Ronda Rousey, I hope Wladimir Klitschko looks in the mirror and he says to himself, okay, great, I still have two eyes. You know, my nose looks relatively good. Right? I can see, I can think. I have the rest of my life. I've had a reign. I've had my moment. In my era, I was dominant. I hope Wladimir Klitschko understands. Just like Ronda Rousey should understand that a rematch probably plays out the same way. In fact, a rematch might be even uglier. Because now Tyson Fury, you know, before Tyson Fury, who had sparred with Klitschko, Tyson Fury believed Klitschko couldn't land a jab on him. Now Tyson Fury knows Klitschko can't land a jab on him. Right? This fight was in Germany. Where's the next fight going to be? I'm guessing the champ is going to be able to have that fight home in the UK. Right? The crowd here was jeering when Tyson Fury puts his hands behind his back. Think about that. Against Wladimir Klitschko. The crowd was jeering. Perception's everything in boxing. The next fight, the crowd's going to be cheering if that happens. I know Vitaly, after the fight, said, hey, people need to understand that Wladimir bounces back well. Folks, this is not Layman Brewster. Right? This is a heavyweight with serious skills. Right? I'm just telling you, when Fury goes southpaw, Wladimir Klitschko is puzzled. And it mattered against Wladimir Klitschko. Because Klitschko couldn't smother him. Let me say this. I'm watching yesterday's James DeGale Butte fight. And let me just say, I had DeGale winning that fight comfortably. I give Butte credit. Butte had the crowd on its feet. Butte gave an excellent performance. Excellent. But understand, he was just fighting a guy who had more skills. You know, the fight starts and James DeGale is on his front foot. DeGale is so active on his front foot that after one of the rounds, Butte's trainer tells him, look, don't worry about this. There is no way he can maintain the pace. Now, there's never a moment in the first 3 rounds where you feel that DeGale is having any problems with Butte's southpaw stance, right? DeGale himself is naturally southpaw, but he's switching. He's switching left to right, right to left, right? He's pivoting, right? He comes inside. Let me say this. If you watch that fight, you're going to notice that James DeGale is able to land his right hand, right? It's kind of interesting. You're going to notice that from either a southpaw stance or from a orthodox stance, DeGale is able to land his right hand. And DeGale is beautiful with it because he keeps changing the angle of the punch. At one point, he pivots and he tries to throw right uppercuts, and they land. Right? All I'm saying to you is the framing keeps changing. Now that's James DeGale. Right? I'd be hard pressed, honestly, in the entire sport to name 2 fighters more talented than James DeGale. You didn't see anything like that. Nothing remotely resembling that. from Wladimir Klitschko yesterday. Right? You know what you're getting from Klitschko. Right? He's in an orthodox stance. He's trying to come forward like this. Right? He's trying to set up a right cross or a left hook up top. Right? That's who he is. Right? He's completely the opposite of, let's say, a Jack Dempsey, little bit of roll, right? A Mike Tyson, right? You don't think bob and weave when you're talking about Wladimir Klitschko. It caught up with him yesterday because he was fighting a guy who, quite frankly, has a front foot game, has a back foot game. Think about it. For stretches of this fight, Klitschko's on his front foot. Fury's on his back foot. From his back foot, Tyson Fury is dominating this fight. The announcers wanted to know why Wladimir Klitschko was so wooden. It's because Wladimir Klitschko couldn't allow himself to get countered. It's because Wladimir Klitschko had to be in a shell, because if he opened up, he may have been knocked out. Understand, like the Gale, Fury can switch lefty to righty. And understand, Fury can throw power shots from either stance with either hand. Right? When you revisit the tape here, you'll understand the guy who landed his jabs more effectively in the match. Think about it. When's the last time we said this? The more effective jabber in a Wladimir Klitschko match was the other guy. Right? So, all right. Tyson Fury is channeling Aerosmith. All right. Tyson Fury's a bit of a character, seems to have a screw loose. He's the best heavyweight in the world, folks. Right? I'll agree Alexander Povetkin's style would be problematical. Right? Povetkin is a guy who's bouncing angles and who has speed and power, and who's learned a lot since his fight against Wladimir Klitschko. Right? But understand, the rest of this division, right, I think it's there for the taking. Finally, let me close by saying this. You know, we've had some very corporate, very cautious heavyweight champions of late. Let me just say this. When I was a kid, some kids, black kids, let me be specific, were turning up as murder victims in the city of Atlanta. It was jarring. I remember it shook up my parents, shook me up. I wasn't even in Atlanta. I lived in New York City. Shook us all up. This story just couldn't get on the front page. Right? People were panicked. People in the black community were talking about it. It just didn't seem to be getting the national attention. This was before, you know, social media and all this other stuff. Right? You know, people were, you know, shrugging their shoulders. It was like, well, you know, there's the Klan out there. This must be Klan related and stuff like that. And then a guy stepped forward. He wasn't even the champion at the time. He was a former champion. Right? But let's face it. This guy was always a champion. Right? Ali steps up. Ali offers money for information that would lead to the conviction of whoever was doing this. Right? Suddenly, this story was on the front page. It was like the people in power weren't really focusing on this story. And then here came a guy who had gravitas. Right? The former heavyweight champion of the world. Right? And he shined the light on the story. I'll never forget it. Never. You know, an argument can be made that for everything Ali did in the ring, and I mean everything Ali did in the ring, that this was his best moment. right? In fact, turn back the clock. Reuben Hurricane Carter, former fighter, who, I've made a video here, I thought he was guilty, but whatever. He was in prison. There were concerns about whether he had gotten a fair trial, right? A bunch of celebrities came forward, Bob Dylan, Ellen Bernstein, a bunch of people, and said, hey, we're concerned about whether this guy got a fair trial. One of the people who stepped forward was Muhammad Ali, right? It shined a huge light on this issue. Now, athletes in team sports, right? Football, American football, whatever, right? They're employees of the team. They're afraid to speak out on issues that matter because they might get traded. They might get fired. Some employer could call them into the office and say, hey, dude, man, you're hurting my brand, right? I own the team. You're an employee of the team. What are you doing talking about these controversial subjects, right? You know, whether a guy got a fair trial, some kids getting killed in some other state. Hey, man, what, you know, why are you talking to the media about all this, right? Well, understand, when you're the heavyweight champion, you're your own boss. Understand, too, I know a lot of people in boxing have done a lot of great things. But you know my belief, and I'm totally biased. I'm unfair here. There's a heavyweight champion, and then there's everyone else, right? People can easily name heavyweight champions from different eras. It's a little bit harder if someone came up to you and said, "Who, you know, dude, name me some lightweight champions." You might be struggling a little bit, right? I'm guessing most of the people watching this video could easily name 5 former heavyweight champions. Now, we're in perilous times, right? You have debasement of currencies. You have countries in debt. You have hedge funds making a killing off of Greece. You have sovereignty issues. You have income inequality increasing, right? Champion Tyson Fury, let me just say, I hope you are the kind of champion who does things that someone on YouTube 30 years from now will talk about as being great things. Like I'm here talking about Ali stepping forward and shining a light on the murders of black children in Atlanta more than 30 years ago. Right? We really haven't had that kind of champion. A guy who people view as a statesman. In other words, the politicians aren't getting it done. People are concerned. They need a voice. And then here's the heavyweight champion of the world. Here's someone who is in the public light, who's actually using his power, his pulpit, to actually make the world a better place. Let me say this too. A lot of champs fight in, you know, their favorite places, their backyards, right? Germany, Madison Square Garden. Hey, nothing wrong with that. What I want people to do is I want people to just research the places that Muhammad Ali fought in. Right? He was traveling around the world. Right? You know, Rumble in the Jungle, Zaire. Right? Thriller in Manila, the Philippines. Right? Just look up the places he fought, how he spread the sport, how he was a ambassador for the sport. Right? Tyson Fury, the world's in front of you. You have one of the crown jewels of sport. You're the heavyweight champion. right? I hope you do it your way, and I hope your way includes reaching out to fans who are looking at you for inspiration and guidance. Anyway, that's how I see it. Congratulations on the win, not just Tyson Fury, but subscribers to this website. Let me say this too. If you haven't seen the James DeGale Lucien Boutte film, you need to. Right? Fighters who, I'll just say there's some fights where you watch the film and you think more of both fighters. You say, man, you see the effort, you see the skill level, and you say to yourself, wow, that's that fight. I thought the 12th round was classic. I thought DeGale was on his game. I thought Lucien Boutte looked good, right? That fight gets a thumbs up from me. Anyway, that's how I see it. DeGale, by the way, delivered for gamblers here too. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. And for non-boxing sports picks and just commentary on non-boxing, dwyervip.com. And of course on YouTube, Dwyer70905. I mentioned that because this is also on a podcast on iTunes. All right. Thanks for stopping by.